I think business is incredible. I think it has a very important role to play in society. It brings wealth, purpose, dignity, all these great things. But the leadership that's needed right now is so intense and difficult. And particularly if you want to be somebody who moves fast, but in the right direction. High velocity leadership, decent 21st century leadership that's human-centered. How do we energise, inspire those good leaders to do great things?
Hello and welcome back to the Courageous Leaders podcast, brought to you by the Change Creators, where we strengthen leadership teams creating environments where people and profits can grow together. I'm your host, Joanna Howes, and on today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Sophie Devonshire, Chief Executive Officer of the Marketing Society. Sophie is an experienced CEO, leadership expert and entrepreneur, as well as a popular keynote speaker and best-selling author. So let's get started. Hello, Sophie. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making the time to be here.
I'm so happy to be talking this through with you, Joan.
I'm very excited. I've seen you on stage so many times and now you're right in front of me, so I can't wait. I really can't. And I'm really curious to know, what's been that courageous moment for you?
It's so interesting when you start thinking about this concept of courage, because so often you think it should be the big things, and it is. There are some great stories out there, but it's also the small things every day. And I like thinking of courage as a bit of a practice you can get better at. One of the most courageous things I think I've ever done is something that maybe at the time I didn't appreciate was courageous. But writing a book, writing my first book, was so much harder than I thought. And it did require courage. So I set out to do it because everyone wants to have written a book, right? And I thought, how easy, how hard can it be? You know, how easy this is. But it's kind of like becoming a parent.
Okay.
It's a brilliant idea in theory.
Okay.
There's a lot of pleasure sometimes in the conception, but it's so hard work to get it out. And then it's totally worth it, right? So the courage that I didn't anticipate was twofold. There's first the audacity that was needed, because in writing my first book, Super Fast, Lead at Speed, I chose to speak to 100 incredible leaders. And the courage of approaching them, of, being a bit cheeky, making sure that I got the right content was one thing. But then I was hit by the most ridiculous, outrageous tsunami of fear halfway through writing it. And it was imposter syndrome, those little imps, which was pretty obvious. Who was I? It was fear of perfection, that desire to write a bestseller and it to be brilliant. And it was really interesting as an experience for me, because the process I use, the system I use to get through it, has been useful for other things. So courage is acting in the face of fear, and I was stupidly fearful about it. What I then discovered, or somebody at the time pointed out, how few women write business books. You all know it.
Yep.
And how few women have a voice on the stage when it comes to business. So it was purpose that got me through this in so many different ways. First of all, a desire to make sure we're getting the right balance of voices in leadership and in business. It's incredibly important. It's been proven. I care about it. So even just like one more woman writing a book, that felt like if I got it out there, I'd be at least contributing a small amount. Then the second bit was personal purpose bit of, I think business is incredible. I think it has a very important role to play in society. Brings wealth, purpose, dignity, all these great things. But the leadership that's needed right now is so intense and difficult. And particularly if you want to be somebody who moves fast, but in the right direction. High velocity leadership, decent 21st century leadership that's human-centered. So there's a personal purpose bit for me in all my work at the moment, which is, how do we energise, inspire those good leaders to do great things? So the fear was helped, and the courage came from a reframing in my brain. My good friend, David Keane, who does some brilliant sales training for Catalyst, if anyone ever wants it, always helps reposition the consultative sell as you're not selling, you're helping. And I see how often that helps. And it's the same with this. I don't like the idea of being out there and going, hey, this is the Sophie show, and my mother's voice of you're showing off. But I do like the idea that when I share the things that I've found and discovered, like Magpie, and share it with others, that it's helping.
Yep.
So maybe courage through actually just getting it done.
It sounds like to me that choosing to write a book helped you find out so much about yourself and just what you can lean into and the resilience you had to show and the connecting with your purpose more to actually, it's funny, isn't it? We set out to do something and then you realise, actually, just by doing that, I've actually figured out so much more about me that I actually even realised. And then I think the power of purpose is very similar to me. Is when you make your purpose bigger than you, it helps you put yourself out there. I remember my first post on LinkedIn after 2 years of not doing it. I was like, this isn't about me.
Yeah.
And he said about the selling, it's not about me. No one cares. It's like, actually, if I can help, I've got to get out of my own way to go out there and be able to help.
And I'm sure you get a lot of people therefore thanking you for it because they're in the same position and wanting to do it. So there's a representation piece there of actually, I think even if you're a bit rubbish at times or you're not perfect, actually that's helpful for people. So there's a forgiveness there. So that it's helping. But it's not just helping other people, as you say. Doing things like this helps you. So in the Marketing Society, it's this incredible community of change leaders. And they're all people who not just care about themselves, but they're also quite interested in sharing, partly because they know it embeds the learning for them. When you discover things and you talk about it, science shows it helps you get better at it. And it's a way of staying curious. Marketeers are curious. The best entrepreneurs, the best innovators, the best leaders, everybody should be curious. So doing something like writing, the research that I continue to do, the conversations I have, it definitely helps me. I mean, this is all the book and my second book, Love Work, both of them are me talking about what I'm trying to practice and how challenging it can be, but also learning from the stories of others to help yourself and help others go faster, go further.
Hence why I'm loving sitting here talking to you, because I'm gaining so much. It's lovely. So I'm really fascinated. The book, which we've got here, which I absolutely love, and I said to you, it's come into my life at exactly the right time, which I love. And we'll unpack it a bit more. Where did the idea of doing super fast come from? Was it something that you were noticing in leadership, a problem you were seeing? Where did you even birth the idea of the book?
It was at a time when I was consulting and advising with a number of senior leaders, executive teams, C-suite people. And it was at a moment when everybody realised that what's happened across the last couple of decades is incredible for business. The great acceleration that's happened because tech's led on tech, ideas on ideas. We've had this incredible, almost compound interest that's happened post the iPhone, everything else that's going on, has led to incredible opportunities for ambitious people. So lots of impatient leaders were saying to me, Sophie, this is amazing. This is the best time in business for us to do this. We can make this happen. We can make it all happen super fast. My team, my organisation, it's so slow. Yeah. And then at the same time, of course, there was also the sense of, because we're in now an always on culture, all the benefits that offers to be able to be immediately accessible also means there was a pandemic of overwhelmitis hitting everybody. So, how do you deal with the fact that the opportunity for pace is exciting and exhilarating, but also exhausting? So it was a conversation that everybody was talking about. It's now accelerated again.
Yeah.
So we've suddenly been hit by the next, it's the fourth industrial revolution, as we know. Matt Britton, who is the managing director of Google in the UK, who's one of my super fast interviewees, talks about the fact that when the one thing is always going to change is business, when everything is going to continue to change, leading at speed is essential. And the way we change as leaders has to be addressed as well. So I could see both that people needed ideas and perspectives from people who were coping okay with it, but also that we need to have a conversation and a narrative about what 21st century leadership looks like in a world of business which is very, very different.
If you're enjoying this episode and finding it insightful, I want to take a moment and remind you, if you haven't already, to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a small action, but it makes a big difference. Not only will you be the first to know when an episode drops, but it really helps us to continue to create this content for leaders like you. And I'd love to hear from you. So if you've got thoughts, questions, or ideas, feel free to drop them in the comments. Also, if you want to explore how my leadership training and coaching can support you and your team, then drop me a DM and we can have a call. Thanks so much. Now let's get back to the episode. And I'm curious, what have you noticed within yourself and leaders you work with within the society? How are you noticing the relationship with uncertainty is for people?
It's ridiculously hard, of course.
So hard, isn't it?
So I think the conversation has to be about, acceptance first of all. So, ambiguity and not accuracy. Momentum, not perfection. We need to storytell, not tell. We need to accept that actually we need to prepare, not predict. All these shifts and changes require strength of mindset, strength of leadership, and finding ways to support people through it. Because one of the challenges, and I definitely saw that in all the interviews with pace setters for my book and the people I speak to now who are driving incredible success, the leaders tend to be the pace setters. They tend to be really comfortable with change. That doesn't come naturally to everybody. And change is uncomfortable, and uncertainty and a lack of control over change. So we've actually been looking at this a lot within the Marketing Society. It's this global community of natural change leaders. And we know marketeers have always been brilliant at leading change. We know how to change opinions. We know how to change behaviours. We know how to change the trajectory of a company, right? So talking about what do we learn from the change makers is partly about understanding how to lead that change, but it's also how to enjoy the fact that ambiguity is there, that we can't look in the rearview mirror. And again, I think marketeers are particularly strong at this. We should always have been comfortable with ambiguity, but addressing it full on, understanding not everybody feels comfortable with it, and helping people prepare is all the narrative right now, and is absolutely critical.
Because I do think you say uncertainty plus speed equals overwhelmitis, which I love your term for that. I hadn't heard that before. Is that something you came up with?
It's a pandemic. Everybody's suffering from it, right? 5 years on from the last one. This is definitely one that's going.
And it's really interesting. I'm noticing, so are you familiar with disc profiling, Myers-Briggs and stuff? I'm just noticing a sort of a pattern that the ones who've got that quite dominant, high energy
drivers
seem to be really setting this pace, but unfortunately not being able to bring their people with them. And then you've got the people who are a bit more, I naturally sit in that bit more steady, a bit more thought, like planning and stuff, are desperately trying to go faster, but then get overwhelmed a bit quicker. But the people are with you. It's just you've got to make sure you don't burn out, because this is using energy that's not natural to you. What's your style? How do you navigate it?
There's so much in that, Jo. I love the human understanding, tech understanding we really need right now. It's essential in high velocity leadership. But that human understanding, not just being close to the customer, which as we know is the most important thing to help you go further and faster, but understanding your teams and the styles. And it is really difficult to do that. But there are ways around it. You can look at structuring for speed. You can over communicate. But that is a lot of what people are doing at the moment, and understanding it. I mean, for me, I definitely have an action bias. And I love, one of the things I've been fortunate to do in my life is work in big multinationals and with startups and scale-ups and founders as well, and done that myself. And one of the fantastic things about startups is, of course, the pace at which you can go. And that's why there's been a bit of a fetishization of them in the corporate world. But there are lots of things that can be taken from that into the organisation. But it does start with understanding what kind of organisation you have, who you're talking to, understanding your team, and that human understanding of know thyself. Because we spend so much time figuring out how machines work, and that bit of understanding how you can manage your energy, drive that energy, make the most of your strengths, your skills, your predilections, your personality, really, really helpful, which is why coaching and having support from other people is really essential.
Yeah. And I think I'm definitely seeing the huge trend now in the most things I'm going in to train companies in is human behaviour. How do we understand each other? I've got a workshop next week. It's literally, they don't want work mentioned in the whole day. It's just, who are we as a team? And how much of that do you think plays into that preparedness you're talking about, that understanding? How much is it now knowing each other as humans allows pace? Because I remember being in work, there was no investment in us really getting to know each other apart from a chat down the pub. But how fundamental is that understanding Like, do leaders now need to go and do like a psychology degree? Like, how far does this need to go for us to be ready for what's coming?
I think human-centered leadership is going to be more important than ever, because, of course, we've got all the trends happening with the disconnect of how people feel about work right now, and the dignity of work is complicated by what's happening in AI. But people ultimately will still continue to drive success, and understanding your teams and being the sort of person who's worked on your human understanding. I don't know about if it needs to be a psychology degree, but certainly practicing, thinking, getting advice from people, skilling up with the soft skills, right? We've always said that they are important, but of course we know they're underestimated. Right now, if you think about what's just about to happen, the grenade that's just about to hit, we're going to be forming and storming and norming teams very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And Patrick Lencioni, the guru on Teams, says it's not finance, it's not strategy, it's not technology, but it's teamwork that's the ultimate competitive advantage because it's so rare.
Yeah.
So if you can build a team and take that time to understand what's happening, you've got that compound interest of power because everybody's coming together. But it's definitely a good example of slowing down to speed up, taking the time to understand what your team's like. Anne Bowden, who's amazing, one of our Superfast interviewees, talks about hiring unbalanced people because she wants to have people who are really good at something in her team, but that always means they're not so good at something else. That's why teams are important, because working out how you can fit and bring out the best in each other, it's just incredible superpower.
I've not heard that before. It's so often where we're trying to mold people into trying to do everything, and actually do just let them play to their strengths.
Absolutely. I so believe in doubling down your strengths.
Yeah.
It's the most efficient way of doing it. There are certain things I'm never going to be any good at, and understanding that, but the things that you are naturally energized by. So there's a whole load of stuff about strengths. I think that strengths are actually what energizes you, and I love that. So that's an area to go down, and more efficient.
So I'm super curious because I love this whole slow down to speed up, which in theory you go, oh, that sounds really nice. Just slow down. But I think naturally as humans, where there's a fear of slowing down, you're going to miss the boat, what's going to happen? And then I look at what you do. I see your LinkedIn and hi, Sophie's where? And she's here now. And she's on stage over here and she's doing this and she's launched this and she has another book. Like, it's incredibly inspiring what you do. And you're one of the speakers and one of the people I've met do it so much authenticity as well. And it comes across, you really are able to connect. What does slowing down look like for you? Because it doesn't look like you're slow anywhere. Just out of curiosity.
So this is such an interesting area to constantly look at. And I know you've had Emma come on to talk about, and we have a lot of discussions about the importance of slowing down, right? It is essential. Carl Honore, who's also one of my Superfast interviewees, wrote a fantastic book called In Praise of Slow. So there's plenty of things out there which really point out why we should do this. I tend to talk to people a bit more about the power of the pause. It's really helpful when you're speaking. Because when you pause, people think, has she said something important? It's really helpful to plan it in your life. And if you are talking to impatient leaders and those who are thrilled by the acceleration, actually a strategic pause is much more acceptable than, we've got to stop. The idea of stopping is not there. But absolutely, I'm working on cherishing the slow. So if you think about the pause, you have the pre-mortem before a project, working out when it's going to go wrong, what's going to happen. You do a pause in the middle because science shows that actually if you tell people they're halfway through something, they always speed up.
Nice.
But also you can check you're on track. And then there is the pause afterwards when you can get fast, fierce feedback, which Angela Arendt talks about. Fast, fierce feedback, very important while it's still fresh. So building in the pauses for projects and then building in pauses in your life. And I work all the time on obsessing over my diary and my energy management or whatever to work out where the pauses need to be to reflect, to recharge, to reconnect with people. So I, want to be able to relish time with people when I've got it. And it isn't easy because I want to do everything everywhere all at once.
I say, can you say no? How easy is it for you? An opportunity comes in. How easy is it for you to go, no, even if it's something you really want to do, to say no to it because you need to protect that time?
Yeah, it's really hard because naturally you want to help people and you want to say yes, but saying no with pace and grace as much as possible.
Ooh.
So saying it quickly, the slow no is, and of course I'm not always perfect at this, but the slow no, I mean, when you're looking for investment or when you're trying to get someone to do it and they take ages to say no, that's just wrong. And working out, I can't do that. Can I suggest someone else who can do it?
Right.
Or explaining that isn't right for me right now, but I really appreciate it. Just whatever it is, trying to keep the grace. It makes me feel better about saying no.
Yeah.
But I'm working on what that decision-making framework is. So again, once you have purpose and your goals for the year and what you want to do, it's much easier. So I had an opportunity come in this week and I was able to say yes to it quite quickly because it's in line with where I want to go. It's not an immediate win for me, but it's consistent. So having a bit of a framework in anything is a great speed tool, right? But yeah, I know the theory of it, and I am definitely not the best at it because
I think we're all work in progress.
Yeah, of course. It's iterative, right?
Yeah.
It's the practicing the courage, practicing and that's why I think it's really interesting to talk about it, think about it, learn about it together.
Yeah.
Because, I see 80-year-old impressive people still learning about the world and about themselves.
It's just so powerful. And it's such a shame that everything we're talking about, I think a lot of it human beings we know, putting it into practice, it's like we're so ingrained in some habits of what we should do and staying ahead. But I think if we could all just take that evidence of going slower does work, trust it would be so important. I'd love to know, where for you has there been a
just on that ledger? Because I do think it's okay to celebrate things that go fast too. So not going so fast that it's unsustainable. There's rocket ships have, and this is literally rocket science, there's max Q, which is the moment at when the increased velocity hits decreased oxygen. Probably the science isn't right there, but and it's the damage point, and people look out for max Q. So definitely going too fast, and we're talking a lot about that because quite rightly, especially in business, in marketing, there's a lot of burnout. So getting the pace right. But I talk about pace because pace means variable. So you can have the slow bits, you can stripe your pacing. So I'll have a really intense week and then a less intense week to manage the energy. But I do think that celebrating things that can go fast, the thrill of seeing brands grow fast, businesses grow fast, people grow faster is amazing. And there is a lot of wastes of time in terms of how people are doing things. So citius est melius, quicker is better, with an awful lot of things, that Latin phrase. Yes, slowness is really helpful if you are looking at seduction or casseroles or bomb disposal. But in business, there's still a lot of...
need to go fast.
Well, I think it's not about going fast, but it's about moving with velocity.
Yep.
So I spoke to some scientists about the physics of speed, and they talked about velocity as a brilliant word, which I absolutely love, much sexier. Because velocity is speed in a given direction. So if you're a leader, you set the direction and then you're moving in a sustainable way. And that's what we're talking about here. Yeah. But it isn't necessarily anti-fast, but it's doing it in the right way. And moving fast and not breaking things. How do we build today and build tomorrow? So I'm really interested in the legacy of leadership in business. And if you just do it in the short term, I want to speed at all costs. And of course, that's not what I'm talking about, which is why the velocity piece is there.
It sounds more intentional. And you just made me thought, because I'm thinking of some people I'm working with right now. If you're a real pace-setting leader, and that's your natural DNA, and you've got some different unbalanced people in your teams, you've got some people that aren't working at your pace, and you are frustrated as hell that they can't go at the pace you go at, what would be your advice?
It's a really common conversation. I think being prepared with the tools to accept that, and also being compassionate as a leader. So David McQueen, who talks about brave leadership, doesn't just talk about empathy, he talks about compassion. And the compassion is, understanding the context in which people operate. And when you know that people need reflection, you can provide them with the full rationale and the summary document. When you know that people need to be told a few things, I mean, it's the age-old leadership advice. Keep talking about things until you are sick of saying them, and then they may actually...
Might land.
Yeah. Marketing messages, definitely important to look at. So, the compassion. And also just understand, I do think there's a danger in everybody wanting to hire in their own image and have everybody who's full of energy and not working. So I do think all the things you do and other great coaches do to do the personality profiling, amongst the team is absolutely priceless. I really appreciate, I've got a brilliant team at the Marketing Society, people I really like, and people who are so different to me. And we laugh a lot sometimes at how complementary that can be.
And that's the thing, is looking at the complementary, not keep focusing on the tension or any friction.
Yeah.
But not ignoring it.
Yes. So I was really lucky. A couple of weeks ago, I got to interview Julia Gillard, who is the first Australian Prime Minister.
Wow.
Absolute badass, incredible, so inspiring, so interesting to read her story and understand how hard it is to be a politician, the first female pioneering politician, and issues for women in leadership. But she and I talked about, obviously, the challenge we have right now in terms of inclusion in leadership. And she said, what's happened is we haven't taught people how to manage non-homogenous teams. It's so much easier when everybody's like you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It really is. But we know the evidence shows us how much better an organisation is to have those diverse perspectives. So if we can give people the skills, the support to be able to lead diverse teams, to celebrate the differences, not everybody needs to be doing all the same things. And that is so positive when you can get to that. And that's one of the reasons, I've always wanted to work in teams and work with people rather than independently, because the excitement of seeing people achieve their full potential at their own pace, in their own way, is amazing.
And that's where, for me personally, I feel a lot of empathetic leadership comes in, is understanding people are different and they see the world completely differently. Mm-hmm. And I've had to get very good at learning my reactions to things, to go, well, hang on, this is about my reaction. Let's first address that versus thinking it's something they've done wrong. Yeah. Where are they coming from? How are they seeing the world? And actually get curious about that first, not just how it's made me feel.
That's so helpful to well, there's a good example for pause. How do you respond rather than reacting to things, and trying to get that context. I do think people are fascinating. I'm trying to work out why in what they're doing. But it's hard because we've got a chimp who will say, hold on, that's a criticism of me, or
I love trying to connect the dots. That's where that come from. And also, I think I was having lunch with someone yesterday, and they've got a very big challenge going on. And it's just like, look, there's so much we don't know about this person. We don't know what their upbringing was like. We don't know what their beliefs were. And it's like, there needs to be there's so many gaps into why their behaviour might be this way that we need to get curious about, not just what we see in front of us right now.
Yeah. So the tell me your story can really help with that. And when you manage global teams, so different cultural perspectives. But you talked there, Jo, a bit about challenge, which is this year's theme at the Marketing Society. Yep. So our Changemakers conferences, which are incredible days that happen in 6 different cities. Theme this year is challenge. So it's how do great leaders, great marketeers, how do they challenge the status quo? How do they challenge the industry? How do they challenge their industry? But also, how do they deal with challenge? Because we all have personal ones that impact. We are human. We all have professional challenges always going on. Honestly, it's whack-a-mole, right? There's always something, especially if you're at a senior level. Oh yeah, didn't expect that, didn't prepare for that, as we talked about. So the question of how people deal with challenge and challenge each other, I think is fascinating right now.
And I think the more you understand human behaviour, I know I deal with challenges so differently to how I did 7 years ago. Like even just a tiny...
So nice getting older from that perspective.
And you just go, and just seeing how you've grown. Like even my mum ended up we went for dinner the other night, she had a whole glass of her wine, she knocked it, went all over me. And old me would have gone, I just went, oh well, mop that up. I think perspective is such a powerful thing as well.
Yeah.
But on that theme...
And choice.
Knowing you've got a choice.
Choosing, you can't choose what happens to you. You can choose how you can respond to you. And that, for me, is proving so helpful. I spoke to somebody yesterday who's had to leave an organisation, and he said, it wasn't my choice to leave, but it was my choice to choose how to leave. Yeah. And I thought that was amazing.
It's lovely. And there's something I've been working on is, if you've only have 2 options, it's this or that, it become a dilemma. But as soon as you introduce a third, it becomes a choice.
Is there a third way?
Yeah, what would be a third way? And so I'm always looking at what are all my choices versus it feeling like a dilemma of choosing between, which I've been practicing, seeing if that changes
things.
That's
nice.
Just a quick pause to ask for your help. We receive wonderful messages on how the podcast is supporting you as leaders and helping to normalise the challenges you face. To help us reach and support more leaders, we'd love your help. If you haven't already, please can you follow or subscribe on the platforms you watch or listen to us on, as it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. On the staying with the theme of challenge, what's been a challenge for you, either personally or career, that's really kind of shaped who you are now today?
A couple of things. One is, so I started my career at Procter & Gamble as a graduate trainee, and I fell completely in love with brands and marketing. I think it's the magic and logic is amazing. With business, I think it's fascinating to see what can be done. And I loved working for P&G and the people I work with. And I fell in love with somebody who is now my husband, which at the time was very inconvenient. And then it became even more inconvenient when he decided, it's the classic, we talk about my book, Love Work, when we talk about the relationship of work, and that was classic A/B testing. He didn't love it as much as me. It just wasn't that fit. So he decided to do a very different career, which involved global travel, which had implications for me.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges I've had across the last few years is working out how to have what Helen Tupper calls a squiggly career.
Yep.
Working around that, working around family, love, different locations. So I've worked in the Middle East, in Dubai, which I love. We have an amazing hub out in the UAE, which is expanding at the rate of knots. So I really love that part of the world. So it's a great opportunity. I have set up a business that I then ran from the UK and then from Estonia, Tallinn, for 3 years. Fascinating place, very E-enabled, really good to spend time there. But that has led to some challenges, and it's not been easy at times. I've had to live in different places and doing different things. But of course, it always teaches you things, and learning about the world, learning that actually you can adapt and pivot and do different things has been very, very useful. And the whole, if it doesn't challenge, it doesn't change you.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it's exciting to change, and it's interesting to evolve if you can learn from it. So that's probably a challenge. And then I have the same challenges everybody has, trying to work out how to fit everything in the diary and in the week, trying to make sure you're operating in a way which is on values and effective. We talk about what we aim to do for the Marketing Society is help our members, who are the best and brightest in the industry, do well and do good. And that doing good means inside their organisations and their businesses, leading the conversation in the economy, because commercial reality is really important, and in society. So one of the biggest challenges constantly, are we doing the right thing always as individuals, as marketeers, as business leaders, as the society? And I want to make sure that challenge continues to be asked.
How often do you just ever sit back in your life and just self-reflect to go, am I happy with where I'm at? Am I becoming the person I want to be? How often does that happen for you?
So that's quite a deliberate practice. And it's part of the super fast thinking and working it out, building in those pauses to reflect properly. So I do a weekly reflection now on what's worked well, trying to celebrate the wins. So part of the thing I know is that progress drives pace. And we always have an endless to-do list, and having a to-do list and celebrating what you've done, I find really helpful. And I'll sit there at the end of the week and go, right, what have I actually achieved? Rather than, that's all these things I should have done. And was that right? Was that in line with it all? I did a big analysis at the start of the year, did my, year compass, and worked with my coach on these are my goals for the year, which, as I say, has helped, get that professional. And I'll probably do a quarterly review at the end of this month. So I don't always do this. I've got a renewed energy for making sure that actually I'm using my time wisely and well, and that the sense of it all is important. So reflection, and I make sure on Fridays I have that reflection. And I also look ahead to the week. What can I look forward to? What's going to be good, so that there's a bit of preparedness too.
So it sounds like you do very consciously look after your mind, your mindset, and how you go.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time where that self-trust or that self-belief hasn't been there, and then, I don't know, you've got a coach or something to then help you get you to where you are now?
I mean, it's very easy to doubt, and especially because I've ended up doing different roles and seeing what's there and coaching. So it's one of the key insights from Superfast, the number of people I spoke to who are high performance leaders who use coaches. There's Eric Schmidt from Google who says best bit of advice he ever received was hire a coach. But you don't just need to use coaches. You can use exercises yourself. Helen and Sarah have a great book, You Coach You. Mentors, peer-to-peer mentoring is really helpful. But having a sounding board to help as you go through it. And I went through when I was thinking about leaving a role, when I had my own business and I needed to sell it. That was a really challenging time. And bringing in different perspectives. You don't have to do exactly what other people tell you. Yeah. But they help give you that third way a lot of the time. They'll sometimes suggest, it's not a dilemma, it's a decision, here's some options. So I'm a big believer in not doing it alone and making sure you've got your tribe of people and your community as well. That's what I love about the Marketing Society. I see people helping each other.
And it's lovely if I've been coming to more events lately. And it's like the more you come to, you're like, hi. And it is that thing of, you start recognising, you start feeling like you really belong. Because obviously, we know your belonging is so important. And people want to be part of something. Yeah. And I think that's so often. So I think it's too often I can naturally go into, I'll try and figure this out. And he's like, you do need help. And as a coach, I have a coach. And I think coaches, as you said, or just having someone, had dinner with an old friend last night who wonderfully can put a mirror up to me. And, and you need those people who are willing to go, as your friend, you need to hear this. And you're like, thank you.
Well, that's priceless.
Yes. And I think
Edwina Dunn, who's one of our fellows, talks about partnerships in work. Dave Trott also says 1 + 1 = 3. It's that equivalent of, and that is the bit when it's hard, because if you're just dealing with something in your head, it's really difficult.
I don't want to stop. I can't look at the time. I don't want to stop. But Alicia, your book is absolutely incredible. And I can't, it's interesting how important it is now. I think if anyone who hasn't read it, please do, because as I say, I'm a tiny business owner and I can already see the changes that I want to make immediately. But I'd like to know, you've achieved so much, everything you've done with the Marketing Society, setting up your own business, writing 2 books. If we go back to young Sophie, what is that? If you look at young Sophie, what would you tell her, or the advice you'd give her?
Thank you for saying that. And by the way, it's only just getting started. I feel like there's so much more to do. But young me, having so much fun. I think there's 2 that I would choose between. One is I would have liked to have probably got to understanding energy management earlier. So Paul Polman in the book talks about, I firmly believe that time management is less important. Energy management is everything. And really understanding the physical, the philosophical, the spiritual side of energy earlier would probably have been helpful, because it's such an incredible thing to have now. But then the other thing is, I think I was, just going back to your theme of courage, I definitely think I've been less audacious than I should have been in the past. And learning to, we have 3 values in the Marketing Society: care, dare and share. And the dare point for our team is really important. How can you practice acting with audacity, asking people to do something, getting something out of it? The act with audacity thing comes from the amazing entrepreneur, female leader, change maker, courageous leader, the widow, Verve Clicquot, who took over her business after her husband died and ran it through incredible times. So war and revolution, and she completely changed the category. Champagne was different because of her. And she wrote to her granddaughter on her deathbed and said, the world is in perpetual motion. We must go before others and lead with our intellect and invent the things of tomorrow. And then her final phrase was, act with audacity. And I really think that, we talk about velocity, moving faster in the right direction. If you act with audacity and you can be a little bit cheeky, a little bit braver, a little bit more courageous, actually it's quite interesting to see what happens.
I love that. I just need to acknowledge you have a remarkable ability to recall. The amount of people like you've quoted and things like, I just like
magpie.
It's amazing.
There's lots of clever, but this is what I love, because I get to meet really interesting people, and then if you can take that and if it's useful to someone else,
do it. And the only way I've learned how to do that, be more courage, is I had to reframe it in my brain to celebrate rejection.
Oh,
so it's like if we get rejected, it's like yes, we've gone bigger.
Okay,
we've given it a go. So we, and our whole team now is reframe that. We used to say people can only say no. Yeah. But if you don't ask, but it's so hard.
Yeah. I had a fascinating conversation with a global CMO the other day who was talking about the whole failure and innovation thing inside organisation. It is organisation. He's
Yeah.
saying we hire the best people.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you hire the best people, they're not used to rejection. They're not used to failure.
Yep.
So of course it's going to be difficult.
Lots of things to keep learning, is it? How we do this. Is there anything we've missed, any insight or anything you'd like to reinforce before we close?
I think we haven't probably talked enough about inclusive leadership at the moment, which is a really important issue. One of the things that comes up over and over again is also the barrier and the speed bump for lots of really smart people in raising their profile and doing things that are a little bit more public in networking and doing things like that. And one of the things that is energizing me at the moment, and I think there's a real danger, is we need more of the decent, human-centered leaders to be taking senior roles in business and making decisions. That will help with a more inclusive world. That will help with a more human-centered world. But one of the things that holds them back is so often the fear of criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, be nothing, and then you won't be criticised. And so when we talk about celebrating rejection, maybe there's celebrating criticism, maybe there's being more audacious in encouraging the good leaders out there and future leaders, I'm talking about mindset rather than level, to share their stories, to connect with other people, to be open about the vulnerabilities, but also celebrating your success and stories with confidence. And I think that's a really important thing for us to be championing and connecting up right now.
Something that I read that really helped me, because I'm not a natural networker or put myself out there. This is all learn. But two books that really helped me was Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Oh, so
understanding
brilliant.
that I kept falling into a fixed mindset.
Oh,
needed to go and grow, and then believing that there's no such thing as failure, it's feedback. So I was like, so as soon as I changed that thinking, and then the very quick one you can read in a day is feel the fear and do it anyway.
Do you know what? I've never read that.
It's so easy. It's literally like, what's the worst that can happen? And just having that combination of that and the growth mindset can open up so many doors. Even if you're somebody that just, it's not your comfort zone to be in, it does help you lean into it when you want to, and to step into that leadership role.
Because it's holding us back. It's holding us back from success, and it's holding us back from helping other people.
Oh, yeah. And as you say, we need a variety.
Yeah.
We do. Thank you so much. Thank you. Are you going to do a third book?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But I am going to find ways of sharing more stories of high velocity leaders.
Perfect. Can't wait. Thank you so, so much. And thank you for everyone listening, and we'll see you next week. Take care. If you've been loving our Courageous Leaders podcast, please can I ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps keep the quality content coming and reach listeners like you that we can then really, really help. We fund this podcast ourselves, so to have your support means that we can keep delivering week on week. Thank you.